All right, Heavy. Let's get back into talking about the people that not only influenced you, but I know you've influenced hundreds, if not thousands. I know it's got to be thousands of people you've influenced. So
Sure.
we're going to talk about some of them. We've got a bunch of pictures. We'll scroll through it a time or two. So you mentioned John Patrick. So I'm going to let you
Yeah.
tell me about your relationship with John Patrick.
Well, I met John actually online through the years. John used to run a website, his own website, John Patrick. So you want to be a gambler, which has kind of been his theme through the years. John has a television program back in the 70s on the Financial News Network that a lot of people don't even know about. But he was so popular with audiences around with his seminars he did and his videos that he did on how to gamble that uh, he landed a television program called So You Want to Be a Gambler. And it was on the Financial News Network. And it was kind of like the Tonight Show. Johnny Carson sitting at a desk, only it was Johnny Patrick sitting at a desk. And he interviewed different gamblers and gambling personalities. And he talked about betting strategies and his whole gaming philosophy and stuff, and handled phone calls just like a call in talk show. And a lot of the guys that we know today from the forums, like our old buddy Black Cloud. I don't know if you've ever seen Black Cloud post
I know the
on the
name.
forums or
I
not,
do know
but
the name, yes.
he's been around forever. He's a uh, retired Air Force. I believe he was a major in the Air Force. Might have been a colonel, but he was one of those guys that flew around with an atomic bomb in the belly of the beast for 20 years. I mean, that was his job, was to get up in the morning, put on the uniform, get in the plane, and circle around the country with an atomic bomb in the belly of the beast just in case the Russians launched an attack. He was in the skies ready for a counterattack.
Okay.
I look at guys like that as American heroes. I mean,
Oh,
these are
yeah.
guys out there doing the job every day protecting
Every
us.
day.
So, uh, even though Black Cloud had some kind of bizarre thoughts on gaming sometime, I stood up and took a lot of heat for the guy sometime because I appreciated his outlook on the different games he played. He played a lot of video poker, he played blackjack. He felt like he'd found a flaw in card counting and blackjack that dated back to the early days of card counting and how they broke the count on the eight and the nine, and he played his system. And John's card counting method kind of fell along those same ways, and John took a lot of heat over his card counting method over the years.
I'm sure he
Like
did.
John would say, in some situations you split the tens, and that was, oh, you never split tens, the whole world never split tens. But well, there are cases when, yeah, maybe you should split tens. And uh, and Black Cloud fell into that same camp. And who's to say they're not? I don't know. I just know I've seen a lot of card counters spend 18 hours a day counting cards for $7 an hour. I never got it, never understood it. Yeah, I've known guys that were on pro card counting teams making, $8 million a year, but those guys are few and far between. But
Yeah.
back to Patrick. Patrick had a great website that allowed players to come together and agree to disagree and talk on a variety of topics. But the most popular topic discussed on his forum was craps. And I hung out there all the time and talked craps. And in fairly short order, I became one of the go to guys for getting crap answers or crap questions to. And John just kind of sat back and let me take the questions and answer them. And told everybody that Heavy's your go-to guy for answers on craps, and he'd step in and pop in with his opinion on a question once in a while if he thought I was getting a little far afield. John was never a dice control guy. He believed in old school, random game stuff. He was a hardcore, he was, still is, a hardcore money management and discipline guy. So am I. He's hardcore regression guy. $30 6 and 8, one hit, take it down to 18 each, or just take it down completely and wait for the next shooter. That's John all the way.
Yeah. I know
And
in his book he would say things like collect, press, take me down.
yeah, yeah,
You know, uh,
and
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 I hear him calling me a dork a lot
yeah,
at the table.
you know what a dork is, don't you?
Well, I know Mork, but I don't know Dork.
Yeah, dork is a nautical team for a whale's penis. So
Well, I
uh,
guess I guess I should not be offended because that's
yeah,
probably a big member.
it's a big chunk of meat. But anyway, the John has his own character and his own personality. John, you talk about American heroes, is another guy that was an American hero, and not a lot of people know the story. But when John got out of high school, the Korean War was in full bore, and all of his friends were volunteering to go to Korea, or they were getting drafted to go to Korea. And so John went down and signed up at 18 to join the army and go to Korea. And the recruiting sergeant said, after looking at his test scores and everything, said, "John, you're too smart of a guy to be signing up to go to Korea, son. You should go to college. You should get an education. Because you're a bright guy." And these other guys, I mean, they're going to just be regular average guys. They're going to be wise guys on the streets, whatever. You should go to school, go to college. John says, "No, these are my friends. I want to go with them. I want to go. I want to fight for my country. I want to do all this stuff." And he says, "Go home, talk to your mother, talk to your parents, see what they say. Come back, talk to me in a week. So John goes home, talks to his family. His mother basically tells him, you know, if you feel like you need to do this, John. And so John goes back and says, "My mother says I can do it. It's okay. I should go with my friends if I want to." And the recruiting sergeant says, "John, if you really want to go in, let me sign you up for officer candidacy school. You'll go to different school. You won't go with these guys to basic camp. You'll go to a different basic. Then you'll go to officer candidacy school. You'll get out. You'll be a second lieutenant. We'll get you a duty maybe in Europe, someplace like that. You won't have to go over there and get shot at." John says, "No, I'm going with my buddies. Just sign me up." So John wound up signing up with his buddies to go to Korea. And John went to Korea, at the tender age of 18. And in short order over there, he sees combat and he gets captured by the North Vietnamese.
North Korean, North Korean.
North Korea, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm showing
different
my
war.
age now.
Yeah, me
He
too.
gets captured by the North Koreans. And if you know anything about the history of the American Korean War, that was not a good place to be because these guys were routinely being taken out by the roadside on forced marches. And if you couldn't keep up, took you off to the side of the road, just beheaded you, and left your body there, starving these guys to death. And John came to the realization quite quickly that if he did not escape, that he was going to die in that prisoner of war camp. So John made a promise to God that if he got out of that prisoner of war camp alive, that he would go to mass. John's a good Irish Catholic boy, that he would go to mass every day for the rest of his life. And John managed to escape from that prisoner of war camp. And he might not want me to tell this, but he did have to kill a couple of guards in escaping.
Right.
And I think he lives with that pain of doing that to this day.
I'm
John's
sure.
93 years old.
Yeah.
And he still, at 93 years old, unless he's sick in bed or in the hospital and just flat can't make it, the man goes to daily mass every day. When he was still living in Atlantic City, he and his mother would get up and go to daily mass every morning. And then they would get in the car and, or they lived in New Jersey. They lived in Livingston, New Jersey. Then they'd drive from Livingston down to Atlantic City and go to the casino. And he would park her at a slot machine and he would go and play poker with his pals and do whatever he would do, make bets around. And I don't think sports betting was legal in Atlantic City at the time, but he would make his sports bets as people who lived in New Jersey did in those days. And then, go pick mom up in the afternoon. They'd have lunch and then back home to Livingston and tomorrow rinse and repeat. But every day, up in the morning, go to mass, then off to the casino. And he did that for as long as I knew him up there until his mother fell off their back porch and broke her hip and had to have surgery and all that stuff. And then they moved down to Florida when his daughter moved to Florida, and he moved down there because he felt he needed assistance taking care of his mother. And since his daughter was going down there, he moved down there and bought a home down there close by them, and has been down there ever since. And hates it, by the way. He would love to be back with his old pals in New Jersey. But John's a fascinating character, and the thing about him attending mass is absolutely the truth. And it says to me a great deal about the character of the man, number one.
Yep. And his faith.
And his faith, yeah. Now, the guy does tell some great stories.
He really
and
does.
Some of them I won't repeat on here because they're personal to him, and I probably shouldn't tell them. But he once owned a chain of Bressler's 33 flavor ice cream parlors.
Yeah.
And that was because he had all that money coming in from the television program on Financial News Network, and he's like, what am I going to do with this money? And somebody said, buy ice cream parlors. And he says, everybody eats ice cream. That's got to be good. So he started buying Bressler's 33 ice cream parlors all over New Jersey, and he had a friend of his who was a former sports bookie who had gotten arrested and imprisoned and for being an illegal sports book. And the guy called John from prison and says, hey, John, I can get out on pardon if somebody will vouch for me and tell me that they have a job for me when I get out. And John says, well, I'll make you manager of one of my ice cream parlors. And the guy says, write a letter for me, please. So he did, and got the guy out of prison and gave him a job running one of his ice cream parlors. I think the guy ended up running most of the chain for him before it was over with. But again, John's had some great stories. He and I did a seminar together in Atlantic City back around, I think it was 2006. That's me and the ugliest shirt in the world.
That is an ugly shirt.
Orange,
you sure Nate Fernandez shirt didn't influence that?
And that's John with the ugliest sweater in the world. And we're up against the ugliest wallpaper in the world. And that's at the Harrah's in Atlantic City there.
Right. So did y'all do a seminar? Did you do a seminar with John? Is that what this was?
We did. We split it up. I talked about dice control, craps in general, and I also did a roulette class that week. And he did poker and sports betting. So we covered 4 topics that day in a one-day class. And then the next day, Steve Solano, who went by the nickname Grits on the internet, and I did a dice control class at the casino dealer school there in Atlantic City.
Gotcha.
So we had a 2 day session. We did the general, you know, gambling session there at the Harris Casino on Saturday, and then we did the dice control class on Sunday. I had the heaviest suitcase in the world flying up there, and the gal at the shuttle bus dropped my suitcase to get off the shuttle bus to get in the terminal and broke 3 out of 4 wheels on the thing. And I had to drag that thing with metal scraping all the way to the terminal.
There's a little
Crazy.
closer picture.
Yeah, another picture of John there.
Yeah.
John was in his prime. I hate to say this. He was 70, I don't know, maybe 75, 74 there. He had a girlfriend in Vegas who flew out to see him in New Jersey pretty regularly back in those days.
Right.
She was, as I recall, a glitter gulch girl. You know, you remember
Yeah.
the days when the
Well, I know.
taxi cabs in Vegas had a placard on the back. It was like a billboard sign that showed a reclining young lady in a sparkly dress, and it advertised the girls of Glitter Gulch. Anyway, that young lady was his girlfriend from Glitter Gulch.
Well,
He,
I know. I know. I guess it's in his book, maybe, or yeah, I think it was in his book. He he had a lot to say about Lonnie Anderson. I think he had a
he was
crush.
he was a fan
He was a fan.
of Lonnie and Dolly and all the other big-hearted girls in the world.
Yeah, he had an affection for certain ladies, I suppose.
Yeah. I talk to John, every few months I'll give him a call to check on him, just kind of a welfare check. Hey, John, you still above ground? Oh, I feel great.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I guess he's doing well.
Well, he still has a lot of fans out here. I
He
know
does.
his books are hard to get, especially the green one,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I own. In fact, that's it right there.
I see
above
it
my
back
finger.
there. Yeah.
That's it right there.
Yeah.
But he's got a lot of fans, and I recommend
John
his book.
was a big impact on a lot of people because until we read his content on regression theory at Craps, just none of us ever freaking thought about it. I mean, we'd take bets down, but nobody ever thought about starting out with 24 each on the 6 and 8, one hit, regress to 12 each. Both bets are paid for. You got $4 profit. Take the next hit, then rock and roll. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a strategy, and most of us had never thought of doing anything like that. So, uh, the first time I read that, heck, I got excited. Then I read 66 inside, one hit, regress to 22 inside. You have $1 at risk. Take the next hit, then shoot for the moon.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
come on. I lost a lot of money on that strategy
You
because
can't. You can lose all I get in this argument with people all the time about strategies, and I don't consider myself a strategy player. But if you're hard headed about having a strategy, you better be able to accept the losses that come with it because they don't always work.
a good example was back when I was Kansas or Missouri, whichever state it was, thought it was a good idea to protect players by legislating the amount of money you could buy in for in any 2 hour session. So
God.
uh, you could go onto a boat and it was in Kansas City. Anyway, you get on a boat for a 2 hour cruise. Now the boat didn't cruise, okay? I mean, it sat still at the dock, but theoretically, you were cruising for 2 hours, and you could buy in for $300 at a table for that 2 hours of play. And if you ran out of money, you just go over there, sit in a chair, and wait for 2 more hours before you could buy in again.
Right.
So the impact of that was pretty simple. Nobody ever cashed their chips in. I mean, table game players would win $500 or $600, and they walk out the casino with it, and they come back the next time they played with $500 or $600 in chips, and they buy in for another $300
Yeah.
because they need to keep some money in reserve in case they had a drawdown. They could pull out another couple of $100 in chips and
Yeah.
drop them in the rail and keep playing. Have a
Yeah.
chance to get yourself out of the bucket. Uh, so there's always a way around something like that. But if you're the tourist in town, like I was on many occasions, and you walk in and you buy in for $300, there ain't no second chance. So if you go in and you play 66 inside and get whacked, boom, ouch, and that happens to you 3 or 4 times in one lap around the table, and suddenly, dang, I got $86 left here, and we've got an hour and a half before I can get any more chips. What do? I start playing the don'ts.
Right.
And that happened to me several times where I got down, you know, to where I had maybe $100 left out of my or less out of my $300 buy-in, and I had to switch to playing the don'ts, and I just a $15 don't pass, followed by $10 don't come, and just sit there and wait. Get 25 action out there, and if I lost one of them, I would lay odds on the other one and hope it came home. Hope I didn't lose both of them, and eventually I'd grind my way back up to 300-400 bucks, and then I could, if the table merited it, get back on the right side. But often, I just stay on the dark side because that's where I was winning.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just crazy. But anyway, uh, yeah, John's a great guy, still is a great guy, and we had some good times.
That's you and Bo. I mean, it's
Ah,
not.
yeah, that's Bo. That's in Vegas in 2006, I think.
All right. So we'll let
This
you.
guy here in the striped shirt
Yeah.
on the left,
Yeah.
we call him Chinese V3 setter. Uh, After that class that day, these guys left, or I left, got on the plane to fly home. Once these guys went down, and I think they went to the Palms, and Vin tossed a 96 number hand.
Wow.
I'm sitting on the tarmac, and I get this phone call. Hey, Vin just tossed a 96 number hand at the Palms. I'm like, thank you very much.
Yeah. Appreciate you letting me know after I'm on the
Appreciate you letting
plane.
me know. The guy left of me on stick there,
Yeah.
that is Hypno Chuck, Chuck Milligan. Uh, ChuckMilligan.com. You can look him up on the internet. Chuck is a stage hypnotist. He
Really.
does those stage hypnotist shows, comedy hypnosis shows, but Chuck does them mostly for our troops. He travels all over the world and entertains the troops in Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia. He goes to Japan quite frequently. Uh, he's been all over the Middle East. Anywhere, anywhere our military station, he's there. Chuck was a Force 10 recon guy in Vietnam. He's one of those guys that they would take out where we weren't supposed to be in Cambodia and kick him out of the helicopter and tell him to have fun on his way home. And
Yeah.
yeah, tough guy. Uh, I don't recall who that guy is. The guy on the right's obviously me.
Yeah. You got
That
a little hair
looks,
right there.
yeah, I got a little fringe on top. That was my days when I was still working for Ford and didn't want to look too dangerous with that shaved head. The shaved head came later.
So.
Now, here's a good one. The guy on the left there is Dr. Willie Sy, spelled S-Y, Williford Sy. Willie Sy wrote the book Feng Shui Craps, which is a book that came out in 2006, I think.
Yeah.
So this would have been right in that time frame. He is the head of the anesthesiology department at Columbia University up in New York. And this guy next to him was his assistant. And this was at Bo's house, dice coach's house in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And Dr. Sy won the Shooter of the Day award. Now, he has a philosophy. Not he's a dice setter, yes, and he does like to set the hard ways. And he has a philosophy about chi energy and all the Chinese energy that's brought to the table.
Right.
And he's all about playing casinos with good feng shui. So he likes, certain colors on certain walls and water features here and all this stuff. But he's got his little routine. He gets the dice set, then he sets them down, stands up, and twirls around 3 times, then picks the dice up and throws them.
He
It's
physically turns around.
physically turns around 3 times and picks the dice up and throws them. And he's just, see that smile on his face? I mean, all the time. This guy is laughing and clapping and having a fun and bringing all this positive energy to the table. And I mean, he is a blast to be with, and he brings positivity and energy to the game when he's playing. I mean, it's a hoot. So, is there anything to the mental part of the game and having a positive attitude and good feng shui? Hey, it's a mystery to me, but it sure worked for him. So that was
Well,
kind of a fun weekend, and we had a great time with it.
there's a lot to be said for positive energy.
Oh, I agree 100%.
So that's
Uh,
probably at one of your craps fest right there, I'm guessing. Cause
yeah, that's
there's
it. This is actually in the back offices at Pyee Press in Las Vegas, where they were still in business. That's a publishing company. It was owned by Stanford Wong.
right.
And back when Wong was working on Wong on Dice, his book on dice control, uh, he allowed us to use his facilities to do seminars. And we did several of them there, including this Craps Fest event where we had practice rigs set up in the back room for the guys to practice on. And we had a big slideshow presentation. We had, I don't know, about 30 people out for that session, including a bunch of his of Wong's card counting guys that wanted to learn dice control as a backup game, which was kind of fun. Now, this is Neil Bruner. Neil goes by Butch. He lived up in Wisconsin and also had a home in Vegas. Actually, his house in Vegas was less than a mile from Nate's house.
Okay.
But he recently sold that house and moved to Phoenix because he got tired of the Las Vegas traffic. So he's living in a suburb of Phoenix now. But Neil's a great guy, retired obviously, and loves to play craps and loves to cruise. He and his wife cruise all the time, and they're apt to take off for 30 days at a time on some cruise to Tahiti or wherever. But great people, and he's a good shooter as well.
All right. So I have to ask this question because you
Yeah,
said you were in Stanford Wong's publishing company there, and I talked to Doza the other day, and
yeah,
he told me some stories about playing with Stanford, and I asked him this question because there's always this controversy. You know, Stanford, he was a mathematical mind. Stanford was a card counter, or really big into blackjack, but he got super intrigued by what you were doing and what was happening in Dice Influence, and then he quit.
right,
He was in it, he wrote a book, and then he quit. And
right,
so my question to you is do you know why he quit?
yeah,
And because everybody's got speculation. I got a speculation. My personal speculation is that he didn't have enough time to practice to become proficient
bingo.
at it.
Yeah, that's really what it boils down to was that uh, he said that essentially that there are people out there who are good at it, who are willing to commit the time and effort to learn the craft and, and succeed at it. But then there were others who just didn't have the patience or the time or the energy to do it. And he didn't feel like he had the time or energy or patience or interest in pursuing it. He thought he could make more money at blackjack and sports betting, which
Right.
are his big fortes. Now, a lot of people don't know that Stanford is big in sports betting, but he's got a big sports betting organization that moves a lot of money around every day. And I mean, we've had guys out of our camp that have been runners for his sports book before. That guys that
Yeah.
his sports guys that the books know can't go make bets because it'll move the line. So they employ professional runners to go make their sports bets for them. Uh, and as far as blackjack, they have teams that are funded by multi-million-dollar bankrolls playing all over the country.
Right.
And these
Right.
teams get paid, you know, a small percentage off what they win, but the bulk of the money goes to the guys that are fronting them.
Sure.
So that's kind of how that deal works.
Yeah. So
Uh,
it's not, in your opinion, then, and then we'll go on to somebody else or whatever. But to finish up Stanford, I guess. So, in your opinion, it's not that he decided that it couldn't work or that it wasn't
no,
possible,
no,
because
no,
that's
no.
what all the naysayers out there say.
Well, of course they do.
Yeah.
And I can pull out my copy of my book that he autographed for me, his book that he autographed for me, where he says, "Heavy, I'll play with you anytime, or I'll bet on your hand anytime," or something
Right.
along those lines.
Right.
And we played together many times, and there were times, he and I were always contentious because of the way he bet versus the way I bet.
Right. Right.
We're standing at the Fremont one day, and he's standing there forever, and I'm collecting on the 6 and 8, and I'm collect, hit, up unit, collect, up a unit, collect, pressing, collecting, and he's got no money on the table. He doesn't like the way the shooter's tossing the dice. Well, it's one of our guys, and he's throwing nothing but 6s and 8s,
Yeah.
and we're all making money. And finally, after about 15 tosses or so, he throws out like a $60 6 and 8. And the next toss is what? Seven
Seven.
out.
Yeah.
And what does he say? That doesn't bother me. He says, I only lost $1.68 on that. Because in his math, I don't know if that amounts right, but in his mathematical mind, he's already done the math and said 1.51% of $121 is whatever it is, $2. Okay.
Yeah.
So that only cost me $2. And so he pops off with that remark, and I said, John, his real name's John. I said, John, you need to ask the dealer for your change because he took the whole $120, And he looks at me like I'm an idiot, but I'm just trying to explain to him that that's $120, dude. That was not $2. And to him, I'm the dumbass, but I'm sorry, dude. I'm the money management guy. You're the guy that lost $120.
Right.
We're playing at the cannery, and one of our guys, now I know the cannery. All right. It was close to Bo's house. What can I say? And one of our guys catches a hand. Now the guy's 45 minutes into a hand. He is killing it. Wong is standing at my left. I'm at stick left 1. Wong is like stick left 2, maybe 3. And our shooter's straight out. And he is, like I say, 45 minutes into a hand. And Wong says, color coming in.
Ha.
I said, what? He says, I don't like the way the guy's shooting the dice. I said, the guy's been shooting the dice for 45 minutes. You don't like the way he's shooting the dice? No. He's too random. So? This guy's got a 45-minute hand, and you're leaving in the middle of a hand. Stanford, you don't quit when you're winning. You quit when you're losing, dude. He says,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to go play some blackjack or video poker. I think it was video poker he's going to play. And he quit. And he went to the bar and sat there and drank a glass of wine and played video poker. And the guy's hand went on for another 45 minutes. I swear to God, it was an hour and a half hand. And he walked away in the middle of it. And I'm like, called him later. I said, dude, you missed the second half of the hand. It went on for another 45 minutes. Oh, I just didn't like the way his dice were looking. I said, well, you got to learn something here.
Yeah.
Don't walk away in the middle of a hand.
There's a lot of difference between a shoe of cards and a good hand of dice.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, just because the dice are bouncing around a little bit out there doesn't mean they're random dice. You know, you got to look at the result, not the rolling around crap. So,
Yeah.
a lot of people think, hey, those dice are bouncing around randomly. But if you don't, if you don't have random results, it ain't random. Oh, that's a shot of our room that day that we had that class out there. We had a little slideshow presentation going on. I don't recognize any of those headbacks out there, but I do see Debbie Garcia, who's known as Soft Touch in the
I was
gambling
going to
world.
say, that's got to be soft touch up there.
Yeah, that's her. And she always brightened up a room. She's a very attractive young lady, and she was one of the best distractors you could have at the table. If she was at the table with you and you were doing something fishy with the dice, not that we ever would,
Right.
the dealers never do it because all eyes were on Debbie.
I got you. Let's see what else we got. There's more of that looks like a professor up there pointing at the screen.
That is Michael. Hello, his mind. My mind just took a hard left turn there. Professor.
That's the
Michael,
professor.
This'll come back. Anyway, yeah, he worked a lot with Debbie. In fact, I think he managed her websites for her. Did a lot of that work. One of these guys, who's the back of whose head you're looking at, and I won't identify him because you couldn't tell anyway, but he's a professional hoe card peeker. This guy goes from casino to casino looking for weak dealers who are sloppy, and he can get a peek at their whole card when they deal cards.
Huh.
That's all he does.
Well, there's one thing in common. I noticed there's one thing in common on that center row right there. There's a lot of scalp starting to show through the hair on those.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. They're not bald yet, but they're getting started.
No, there's some guys with a little male pattern baldness going on the right side of the room for sure.
All right, so this one, I know Scabletti, I know you, I know Jerry, and
Jerry Patterson
Paul
back,
Lickey, but
Larry
there's two
Adele
guys
there
with X's in front of their
in
face.
the blue shirt there. And then back behind Larry there with a big X on his face is Sharpshooter. And then that's my buddy Irish Setter there on the left. And
okay.
we don't have permission to use his picture, so we're not going to use it. The other guys we don't think they would care.
Right. So. All right, so
we're good there.
Here's old Doza with his hands up in the air.
Yeah, that's our buddy Dosa, Dave of San Antonio. And down here straight out is the late, great Freddie Brissentine. Freddie B. Freddie passed away.
I've heard of him many times. I've heard of him, yes.
7, 8 years ago. Boy, we sure miss him. Freddie carried around a little briefcase stuffed full of styrofoam bricks, and he drop that at the table and stand on top of it to shoot. And if Boxman ever griped at him about not hitting the back wall or needing to hit the back wall harder, man, you've never heard a guy cuss more or louder than Freddie B would. He'd take all his bets down, pick up his pass line bet, and throw it at the box man and tell him he could give it to the dealers for a hand in. He was never coming. Oh, he'd throw his player's card at him
All
too.
right, so he's the one that always traveled with the suitcase stand on. Then
Yeah. He always had a little briefcase with him.
did he ever get any heat for bringing that with him in the casino?
Very rarely. Occasionally, they would ask him what it was for. They won't look inside it. Make sure he wasn't transporting a bomb or something. And he'd tell him, that's just for me to stand on when I get to the table because I'm so short. And oh, okay. They let him go with it.
I would
But
think in today's culture, there's no way they could stop you from doing that.
yeah, you could probably get by with that, saying you were handicapped or something. Your
Right.
tables are too tall for me, and American Disabilities Act or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
The guy, oh, that's all right. We're good there. The guy on the right is Steve Solano, I mentioned earlier. That's Grits from Massachusetts. Grits and Greens. His wife is Greens. He's Grits. They couldn't decide on nicknames for themselves, so we picked them out for them. We gave them good Southern names since they were from Massachusetts. The guy in the middle there is Steven from up in, I think, Kentucky, the Southeast. Steve was our Golden Arm winner that weekend. And I know this other fellow's name, and it is escaping me.
What was your criteria? You've mentioned the Golden Arm a couple of times. What was your
Yeah, we do that on a Saturday. We would usually start out with everybody would have to toss 6 rolls with a no 7. Same as a no 7 contest. Have you ever participated in one of those?
Yeah, me and banker dude actually at the first class I was ever at, we had to go into a shoot off.
Yeah. So same concept. Only on those days I called it the Golden Arm Award and printed up a certificate and gave it to somebody.
Yeah.
It got to be every time I brought the certificate in, the glass got broke in it, so I quit doing it. No matter how much cardboard I packed those things in, I'd wind up getting to Vegas or wherever with a broken glass in a certificate. So I quit packing things.
I think my next picture is you and the Mrs. Heavy, I believe.
Let's see. I'm afraid to look. Yeah, that's us. That's up in Tahoe back in the 80s, I guess, probably. I was heavy then.
That's where you got your name from.
I was heavy and she was freezing.
How did how did you like the tables in Tahoe back then?
I liked them. They were 14 footers back then, but they were felt and weren't as bouncy as they are now. And I thought they were pretty playable. Of course, was in
Tahoe
those days.
Was where first time I ever played.
Yeah.
Craps. That's where I got so hooked on craps. It was, it was it was February of 1993. So it's that many years ago now. And I had never played, never even walked into a casino before. And my love for craps, I blame on my sister. I went out there for a skiing trip with her and her husband, his best friend, and his best friend's sister.
Yeah.
And we went out there, and I said, "Well, we're going on this trip." And I said, "I've never been in a casino. I don't know what to do." And so, my brother-in-law gave me a book, just some kind of paperback book. I don't even remember the name of it. It talked about all the different games, which ones you probably shouldn't play, which ones gave. He talked about blackjack, talked about craps, and talked about slots. Which slot, the book was based on one of those, like if you were a slot player back then, you played close to the doors, close to the restrooms, close to the cage, all those kind of things, all those theories or whatever they were. And I didn't know they're different. I just like, okay, I'm going to do this, just see what happens. And that was when you had to drop quarters. We played quarter machines.
Yeah.
You had to drop all them. You drop your quarters in. And we would be. We were
Hands would
sitting
be
there.
black from all.
Do what?
So your hands would be
Oh,
black
that'd be
from all
just
those.
black as my shirt because
Yeah.
they're just coins, coins, coins. Well, we were playing. We went into at that time there was a Caesars there, if I am not mistaken, down the road just a little bit. I mean, you had Harrah's and Harvey's or whatever it is that were kind of across the road, and then down the road, I believe, was a Caesars. My memory says it's Caesars. I don't know what it was.
Okay.
And we were waiting on dinner, and I said, well, we'll play some slots, and I kept winning stupid amounts of slots. I mean, every time I'd go up to something, I'd drop it, and all them coins would start clanging and clanging and clanging, and you got to get a bucket and scoop them up.
Yep.
And I'm walking around. I've got buckets, and I'm like, come here, sister, take some of these buckets. I don't want all these damn quarters. I don't know how many quarters fit in a bucket. Well, it's probably a lot. And I was just giving these buckets. I said, here, I don't want to total all these things. Go cash them in for me or go play them, whatever. I mean, I was winning stupid amounts of money. We went and ate and came back down, and we went to the craps table. And I got in at like stick right. I didn't know anything about it. Nothing other than what I had read. And I it probably was past the line come bets, right? So
Yeah.
we're playing, and the dice were way down on the stick left side. I'm on the stick right. My sister's over there in the hook with her husband, and we're all at this table. And this table was like, you can't stand square to the table. You got to stand with your shoulder because there were so many rails, and it got packed so quick because everybody was throwing the dice for 20 minutes or more. I mean, it was just on and on and on and on. And this guy next to me, Oriental man, Asian man, and he had a female with him. I think she was Asian. I can't really remember. It's been so long. And the box man would stop and say, Mr. So-and-so, they've called for your reservation for dinner. And he would say, no, I'm not playing, delay. So he just wouldn't leave the table. Dice come all the way around. I shot, and I mean, I didn't know nothing about it. I was just taking them and slinging them a little bit. I got kind of superstitious in my throw, and I'd kind of set them a certain way and got a little superstitious on how I would throw them because I was throwing well. And then he got the dice finally, and he was in the middle of a long hand, and the stick man brings the dice back over there to him, and he's laying out flat on his back on the floor. I mean, I don't even know if he was breathing. They stopped the game real quick, just momentarily stopped the game, called paramedics. As soon as they got him on a stretcher, it was game back on. I mean, they didn't want to miss a beat. And they bring the dice, and then they look at her, and she goes, and the lady says, I'll shoot for him. The woman that was with him didn't leave the table. she wanted to shoot. So
That's funny.
yeah, it was. Like I say, I don't know if he went into a diabetic type coma, if it was because he was passing up all. Because literally, I think he missed up. He probably passed 3 or 4 dinner calls. That's how long it was on that table.
That's beautiful.
And I was immediately hooked. I mean, I was hooked so bad right then.
I've seen similar stuff. It's crazy.
Is that your gentleman there?
That's he's gone by many names through the years. Nacho Money is one of them.
Nacho, Nacho Money.
Nacho Money. He is a computer game designer, and when I first met him, he was living in Austin, Texas, and working down there. And he was very interested in photography of old trains, and I was kind of interested in old trains, locomotives, and stuff. We swapped some videos back and forth and talked about that stuff. Found out he was interested in craps. Signed him up for a class. He was just a natural. I mean, he came in and just every time he touched the dice, he was a shooter. And as he grew his business, he was traveling to uh, Hong Kong a lot because all his games were manufactured over there.
Right.
So he would go to Macau and play over there. And he built a reputation for himself over there as being the gunslinger from America. As he walk into the casino and play one hand at the table,
Just one hand.
go up the table, buy in big, play one hand and bet very big, and win that hand and walk out of the casino. And that was it, you know. And had all these big Chinese gamblers wanting to hire him to play for him, all this
Sure,
stuff.
absolutely. I can just see it right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just
to buy him to throw the dice.
yeah, just building that mystique, you know. And but he's a pretty cool guy, and you know, now he's got kids and all wrapped up in family and lost interest in dice pretty much, and making a fortune building video games.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a big business.
Oh, it's huge.
Here's a guy. Here's a guy that actually had a dark beard with no
Yeah,
hair.
once upon a time it was kind of dark. In those days, I could put on a pair of black jeans and a black T-shirt and walk into a bar, and everybody back off and get out of my way. You know, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
walk into a restaurant. You know,
That looks
I'd
like you're teaching the same. That's the same. That's not your money right there,
yeah, that's
correct?
him. That's him.
Okay.
There. Yeah, I walk into a. That's one of my old tricks. If I'm standing outside a restaurant, or if I walk up to a restaurant and I hear them say "Last call for Johnson," table for three, you know, and I've got my wife and my daughter with me, I'll walk in and say Johnson right here, you know,
Yeah.
because it's last call. I know Johnson's already given up and left. I'm going to go in and take their table.
Well, there's
If I've got my
Memo
black
standing in
shirt,
the
black hat, and
Memo.
black jeans on, they'll
There's
take it.
Memo standing in the
There's
hook.
Memo again. The guy sitting down there is our old buddy Green Chip, Guy Goen, who passed away from liver cancer a few years ago. Oh, Shoot It All and I got word that he was in bad shape, so we saddled up my old pickup and took one last drive out to Albuquerque to see him about 2 weeks before he passed away.
Yeah.
Went out and drank coffee with him, sat around the house about 3, 4 hours, and spent some good quality time with him. And we missed the hell out of him. That guy had the prettiest toss from straight out you'd ever want to see. And he had these big hands, as you can see,
Yeah.
and he gripped the dice straight down all the way to the table with his hands. He'd have two fingers in front, two on the side, and his thumbs in the back. So I called it a bear paw grip on him. I call it a lock grip when I talk about it in class. It's your fingers are locked completely around the dice.
Yeah.
It's a terrible grip because you've got so much skin contact. But for him, it just worked. Yeah.
Like that.
Yep. Yep. And for him, it just worked. You know, and he practiced all the time on his old homemade table. This picture was taken at Roadrunner's house in his little casita. He called his dice studio, and I recognize it because of a little radio sitting there in the corner on that little shelf. He kept
Yeah.
kept Jamaican music on there all the time, you know, and You go there and turn that thing on, and there was always some kind of Jamaican music, island music playing on that thing. It
Well,
was always interesting.
talk about Shoot It All for a moment, because I know you and he were really tight. I've had pictures
Yeah.
come up with him in the past.
I had a picture that I took that I found that I had not sent you that I was going to send you today, and I got tied up. I had to run my daughter to the doctor's office this afternoon. That's why I told you I didn't know if I'd be back on time to do this afternoon because we were running late. But I meant to send that to you. I found one of he and I in Roadrunner with him right after he climbed in Roadrunner's hot air balloon, about to take a ride in it in Albuquerque. It was uh, George owned his and her hot air balloons. He and his wife did, and because if you live in Albuquerque, you need his and her hot air balloons. And uh, yeah, Jim and I would occasionally get together and take barbecue trips. We get together once a month at least and eat barbecue at a little local joint over here. We lived about 3 hours apart, so we'd meet halfway in between and eat barbecue and solve all the world's problems. Uh, right after I retired from Ford, we Jim was like, "We need to see if we can play professionally. We just need to test it out." And I'm like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And he says, "That's him there on the left in the
Yep.
ugliest shirt in the world." When Jim had not shaved for a while. And I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" He says, "I want us to go over to Shreveport and play every day on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Go over there every morning and play for, 3, 4 hours. And then when we're through, we'll grab dinner and go to the house." So I said, "That sounded like a plan." So I set out my little plan. I was going to go over and buy in for about $500 for a session. I would have a win goal of $360 because that's my win goal. I have a loss limit of about 250 to 300, somewhere in that range. And that was it. So we get together. He'd usually come over to my place, then we take my car from there, the point him burning all the gas, and drive over to Shreveport. Get over there, 9 o'clock in the morning. We'd have already had breakfast by then, or coffee anyway, and go to the table, and we play for an hour and a half, 2 hours, however long it took till we got to a quitting point, and then we cash out, and my true win goal was about $160, but my stretch win goal was 360. If I got 160 bucks, they weren't getting it back, you know.
Right.
I mean, I take 160 bucks and my buy-in off the table, and I'll keep playing with the surplus. But I wanted to win 360 a day, and we did this for 3 months, and I was winning right around $300 a day on average every day playing. And Jim was winning about $30 a day every day playing because Jim was the cheapest player you ever saw in your life.
Yeah.
I mean, we go to the table, we're playing at Boomtown one morning. It was Boomtown then. And and I knew Jim by this time. Jim was a 8 and 10 machine. So I go there and I bet the 8 and 10, nothing else. And Jim throws a 10. And I go from 15 to 25. And Jim's got a $10 bet on it, and he's same bet. And he throws another one, and I go from 25 to 50, and Jim's same bet. And he throws another one, and I go from 50 to 100. Now I'm stick left, he's stick right. He's not paying any attention to me. He's just watching his little $10 bet, and he goes same bet.
Yeah.
Now, this continues until I'm at $1,000. I got $1,000 on it, and at that point, Jim goes from $10 to 15 on
Oh
that
wow.
10.
Wow.
I said, "Jim, you pressing that to $15?" He said, "Yeah, I'm doing good." I said, "I got $1,000 on it, and I've already got 850 in the rack." And he looked at it and he just freaked out and he sevened out the next
Yeah.
toss
You
because
shouldn't have said a word. You shouldn't have
Jim
said.
could not take pressure of anybody else having money on the table. If anybody else had a large amount of money on the table, it just freaked him out.
Yeah.
Now he was playing in Las Vegas at the Fremont one day, and a friend of ours, uh, guy we call Dicer, Dicer, great shooter, who gave up craps after his mom passed away because his mom didn't like the lifestyle, and you know, when she passed away, he got feeling guilty about the time he missed with her and everything, life in general. He felt like he just needed to change his life. So uh, he was living in Vegas. He was playing poker pretty much full time and supplemented with craps. He was a great craps player. Anyway, he'd won.
Y'all were good friends.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he won. Dicer had won a craps tournament and had like $25,000 as a local craps tournament. And he walked in and saw Shooter Dog playing and saw he was just killing the numbers. And he walks up and drops $11,000 on the table and says he wants 11,000 inside, which they say book it. Now that's more than their limits there at the
Yeah.
Fremont, but they
Yeah.
said book it anyway, which was a good choice for them because Jim freaks out and throws a seven the next toss. And then he's about to cry over it. I mean, he's so upset he's about to cry because he's lost the guy's money for it, in his opinion. I'm like, no, Jim, that guy lost his money for himself because he chose to bet it.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of guy Jim was. He was the most honest person I've ever met in my life, number one. He's the nicest person I've ever met in my life. He would do anything in the world for you. He would do anything to help a friend. I mean, the guy would drive 100 miles to lend you a socket wrench. Uh, if he's got a socket wrench you need, I'll come get it, Jim. I'll see you in the morning. Oh no, I'll bring it over this afternoon. You need it now.
Yeah.
No, I don't need it now. I need it tomorrow. No, I'm coming. Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. Just crazy. And try to pick up the tab on a meal with that guy. I mean, you'd reach out to grab the check and you'd draw back a bloody stump. I mean, you couldn't pick up a check with him. It was just
Right.
that way. You'd have to tell him up front when you're going in, Jim, I got the check today. No, you don't. Yes, I do. You've bought
Yeah.
the last 6 times. It's my turn. Well, that doesn't matter. I got money. Yes, I know you do. Well, I'm just spending my kids' inheritance is all. Yes, I know you are. You know,
Yeah.
but leave a couple of lunches for them. I mean, come on, I can handle this. Yeah, and we go back and forth like that all the time. But he was a class guy all the way, and people would talk to Jim or talk with Jim and think, well, this guy's just an old redneck hillbilly. He's just a dummy. This guy worked for the post office 20 some odd years. He sat in a receiving station over there at Dallas Fort Worth Airport for 8 hours, and they worked about 2 hours a day when the mail plane came in and brought all the mail in, and they quickly sorted it out to go out to the different post offices in the Dallas Fort Worth area, which took about 2 hours with all hands on deck. The rest of the day, all day, he sat there reading books. And there's not a book I could name that guy hadn't read. And he remembered everything. I mean, he read some obscure stuff and he read some mainstream stuff. There's nothing in the murder, mystery, crimes, and thriller section in the library the man hadn't read. There's nothing in the strange, bizarre, weird facts section that the man hasn't read. You know, UFOs and aliens, forget it. He knows everything there is about it. But I mean, it's just phenomenal the amount of knowledge that guy
Yeah.
had. And when it came to building stuff, I mean, you know, uh, Roadrunner, Roadrunner was a craftsman when it came to building furniture and things like that. Roadrunner could build real fine, detailed stuff, but Jim could build shit that worked. Okay.
Right. Right.
I mean, if you wanted to build a practice rig and make it out of magnets, and I told Jim for 2 or 3 years, Jim, that shit won't work. And till he brought one over to the house one day and set it on my table and said, "Watch this." Bam, bam, slap, slap, slap. And I said, "That thing works."
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that first practice rig just blew me away. And it's sitting somewhere behind my table here in a briefcase because I asked him to make one that would fit in a briefcase. And, you can put in a briefcase and carry in your car with you. I've still got
Is
it.
that the prototype basically that like Aloha Johnny would make for you at one time?
This prototype was made out of scrap fence riser, cedar
Yeah. Yeah.
cedar slats you make a fence out of,
Yeah.
made out of scrap cedar slats he had left over from making a fence. So he just took those and used those for the side rails, scrap piece of plywood for the bottom. That's what's so great about it. It's made out of scrap lumber.
Yeah.
It's great.
Let me